Now, I would like to invite the panel members to introduce themselves, say something about themselves and their company.
Very good. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Weisberg. I've been in the industry for 40 years. During that time, I ran a rental and staging company for many, many years. We did a lot of innovative work in the corporate event, theatrical event, and art market. While we handled sound and lighting, a lot of the innovation areas where we worked was on the display side. Projection systems, we own some of the first large DLP projectors in the United States, and we're using those in the event market back in the late 90s. Edge blending, projection mapping, warping, media servers, now, of course, LED screens and so on. So at this point in my career, I'm working as an independent consultant most of my time on large screen display applications. Generally, the bigger, the better.
Tammuz.
Hi, my name is Tammuz. I'm the CEO and founder of Zuzor. I'm kind of the opposite. I've been in the industry for 4 years. So really, we're a software technology company. We focus on experiential. And my background is in theoretical mathematics and computer science, but I'm also a professional dancer and circus aerialist. So really, before going to the audiovisual world, I developed a technology for myself, for my own performances, to really kind of bring the backdrop to life. So what we do is we do sensor-driven content. So you add a depth camera, and now it tracks you, and all the content's fully reactive and moving into that experiential realm. And I come at it much more from a kind of startup-y, kind of agile prototyping, as well as an engagement performance perspective about how do you draw people in, how do you get their eyes to focus on you or whatever it is you're trying to communicate, or ideally, how do you bring them on stage and make them the spotlight? So that's really what Zuzor's about, and it's about enabling not us, but you to do this sort of experiential engagement easily and effectively.
Amal Hazelton. I've been with Moment Factory for about 10 years. Background as an urban planner, not very common in this industry from what I've learned. Moment Factory is a full-service design production company of about 425 employees, doing design of the technical, the systems, the hardware, the systems, and the content for originally entertainment, spectacles using AV for live entertainment. That represents under 10% of our business now. Over 90% of our business is taking entertainment technologies, solutions, content, know-how from the stage and the temporary environment and embedding it in permanent environments to attract visitorship, raise the reputation, increase the reach of those destinations so that they can outcompete other destinations looking for the love and engagement of the public that makes them so successful. So on the one hand, with live artists, ticket-based revenues, and on the placemaking, direct and indirect revenues from using entertainment technologies to attract visitorship.
Okay. So the first question I would like to ask the panel is that, what do you think is driving the disruptive display technology? You know, in the past, it has been the display panel manufacturers always trying to push the latest and greatest as the products, their existing products' profit margin gets, smaller and the product reaches a certain point in the life cycle. And then there's a next stage to introduce new products so that they can continue with the innovation, 4K, HDR. So what do you think is driving the innovation in displays? So that's, yeah.
Well, I think the main change that we've seen is that the production and fabrication of these displays has moved from the higher cost centers, geographies, to the lower cost.
Right.
So we don't see that price differentiation any longer. It used to be in our world that LED screens were solely the province of the customers that could afford them. That was generally touring rock bands, certain signage applications, rarely in the corporate market except for things like automobile trade shows. And at this point in time, they've become commodities, and they've become low price commodities. So where these technologies were typically the domain of European companies, American companies, Japanese companies, Korean companies, now they're being made in low-cost geographies and supplied to the trade at a very low price point. So they proliferate, and that's disruptive because more and more people can use them.
What about from customers' point of view? What are customers' needs, and how is it driving the innovations in display industry?
I'll answer both questions. Yeah. So again, I haven't been in it quite like tens of years. So in my experience, it's really a conversation is less and less about hardware and more about how you're using it. And from a millennial perspective too, like a 4K or an 8K display, those are kind of the standards now. So of course you need to have that, and everybody's getting an LED wall of this pixel pitch or that. And now it's less about, I'm gonna pay attention to that one because it's sharper versus that one. It's really about what they're saying and how they're working to get my attention and how they're really like working to activate me, right? So it's like millennials are more and more focused on Instagrammable moments and kind of more the staging and the experience. So how is the display being used within that experience domain? And that's again ties into like the customer journey. They're using a super strong projector pointed on the floor, but like just showing a logo, or are you using even a weaker projector, but it has something dynamic that ties in with my whole experience as I enter, as I move through this way, and kind of ties into pathfinding or whatever placemaking you're trying to achieve. So in my experience, there's a baseline now. Almost all display technology you're using is of a certain caliber that it's becoming less and less of the conversation and more of what am I showing on the display and how am I using it in full context, architecturally, from a design perspective, from a customer experience, customer journey. How does all that tie in intelligently on the display to attract and actually to speak to me?
Amal, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think listening to Pete, he's traced an incredible trajectory from the origins of AV display technologies to the present, and talked a little bit about the future. I know from having heard him before, he's much more of a futurist than that, and has got a real vision of where things are going and can go. Disruptive display for me is not about the micro innovation happening where we're constantly putting out the all-new Toyota, and it's a little bit of a variation on a theme, a little bit more powerful, a few more lumens, a bit more resolution, cheaper price. That's a race to perfection of a one-way technology. That's getting content into the environment. Where I think disruption is really going to happen, and we see it happening already, is in the bidirectionality that Tamus was talking about. So this notion that we're not just force-feeding content into an environment, but these displays, we're in a privileged position as a big specifier to be working with many of the bigger manufacturers in the world and innovators who want to innovate, want to manufacture something new. And the ability to see the world from the perspective of the screen that we are putting into that environment is incredibly important. We put the screen there and we see the screen, but we need to see what the screen is seeing in order to be able to relate to this entire new generation of users of AV enhanced environments. And that means that our projectors need to have cameras in them. That means that they need to have some kind of invisible light sensing technology that can allow us to track the way that that is being distorted on very complex surfaces. That means that from LED screens, we need a way of monitoring and reading what is going on in that environment so that we can take a new generation of content through a new generation of disruptive software back into that environment and take it in and out. It's a two-way street now, and that's where disruption is going to happen. That means AI. That means intelligent systems that are monitoring, reading, understanding, interpreting what's coming in and out, and allowing people to take that information and do something creative or do something informational or marketing with it. And that's where things are going to blow wide open.
Okay. So now the question is, a lot of times installers, integrators, and the end customers also, well, mostly installers and integrators, they would like to have a monitor, just a dumb monitor, and have all the intelligence in the software and the media player at the back end or the server, right? Is that not the case? I mean, would you like a smart display instead? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, that's not what I'm saying. I agree 100% that it has to be a two-way street. In fact, like what we're doing is also, yes, using your movement to generate content, but also tracking your movement, who's engaged, demographic, and it's all about kind of almost tying it Internet of Things into audiovisual so that you can measure, yes, how many eyeballs is this display getting, but ideally more granularly, how much engagement is this piece of content getting? How much engagement is this piece of content getting? What demographic is it resonating with? Like really breaking it down as much as you can. And then again, like startup mentalities fail fast. So content doesn't work, update it, see if it resonates, if this resonates better with the audience. And I don't think the burden should be put on the actual display. I like the idea of kind of like, not a dumb display, but like an LED panel, LED wall, just the pieces, and then you put it together in whatever intelligent way you as the integrator, talking with your end client, however you see best fitting with their end desire. And then the media server and connecting to the cloud and connecting, we use depth cameras, connecting a depth camera, using all these kind of auxiliary, like outside of the display additions to it, kind of like Internet of Things, like adding sensors, but tying it to the media server just makes it much more much more scalable, easier to manage. I can put my display here, but I can put a depth camera here. So someone walking here triggers that and really opens up your possibilities by not kind of handcuffing yourself.
It also provides more future proofing if the display is dumb, but the system around it is smart, which is typically the architecture we would go after. It means that when a better display technology comes around in 6 months, like it typically does, you can replace it or not without replacing the whole system. So we generally build the intelligence into the surrounding components versus the display itself.
Okay. So in Pete's presentation, we saw that LED video, finer pixel pitch LED video being the biggest disruptor in terms of display technology. But from customer point of view, do you agree with that?
From a customer point of view, customers are extremely impressed by high-resolution LED screens. There's no getting away from it. What we have seen in comparing LED technology versus projection display technology or monitors is that in some cases, they're not really reacting to the quality of the display. What they're reacting to is how that display continues to function at a fairly high level, no matter what the environment is. And that gives the client, and most of my clients are designers, tremendous freedom in terms of design. They don't have to worry about where the lighting goes. And often on some of the projects that I've worked on, where we've replaced projection systems with LED systems, and they go, that looks great. They're not actually talking about the screen. They're talking about the fact that the lighting system is so amped up and so dynamic because the lighting designer doesn't have to worry about blowing out the image on the projection screen. So, you know, I think that's been a big change for our markets.
Okay. Amal, would you like to add to that in your space?
I guess where all of that is pointing is towards convergence, one way or another, depending how far we separate the layers of all the different elements that we're talking about. But what's definitely indisputable is that the era of spectacle and static content, if we want to call it that, compared to dynamic or bidirectional interactive content, is really, we're seeing it shift into the past. People are noticing that consumers and public does not want to pay as much attention to a spectacle. They want to, in some way, influence, be recognized by, participate in, even control their perception of the experience that's around them. And now that display technologies can quite literally get pixels onto virtually any surface under virtually any light conditions that exist. And you look at some of the things that we've been doing lately, like YesCo with the Las Vegas sign at Forum Shops. It's actually a Corinthian column outside at Caesar's Palace, completely clad in LED. And then the content for that is very complex and engaging for the complex frame. But then there's ways of actually bringing more simple unidirectional messaging that's easier for a standard operations team to bring into panels or placeholders within a much more complex pixel space ecosystem. And shout out to audio. We talk a lot about immersion. We talk a lot about disruptive displays, but you know, nothing is as compelling as an environment that has audio as well as visual.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that has been coming up lately within IHS market and been a really big concern is the threat of tariffs. Especially, and I think it's really a relevant question for the display industry, mainly because of most of the supply chain for displays, particularly LED video displays, the components are based in China. So if there is a import tariff being imposed on products being imported from China, then that means increase in price to the LED video displays. So now one of the reasons why LED video displays, especially finer pixel pitch products, have been so easy to, not easy, has been gaining traction is because the double-digit price decline year on year. So I think in the near term, it may slow the decline in LED video, especially finer pixel pitch, because the total bill of material for these LED video components, right, LED video displays is huge as a portion of the total displays. My question is that given the cost of LED video displays not at least declining that drastically this year, or there may be some concerns in supply chain. I mean, in the medium term and the long term, the LED vendors will figure out their supply chain. I don't see any concerns. But for the, let's say, next 3 months, where they figure out an alternate, source of supply chain, that may impact the pricing a little bit. Do you see? Have you heard anything from the market regarding that? A concern regarding that? And,
well, there's a quirk in the importation of LED screens. in that LED screens, historically, LED screens are modular. So as far as US Customs is concerned, they're parts. They're parts to be assembled. And as unfinished components, which is how they're viewed, there's no customs duty on them. Whether tariff will apply to non-finished goods or not remains to be seen. I don't know, I'm not sure if anybody does. So they may not be affected at all. I haven't heard of any concerns from any of the LED manufacturers. But if they start shipping these screens as finished goods, as in here's a 100-inch diagonal 8K micro LED display for $50,000, that might be an issue. But if someone wants a $50,000 display, they're probably not too worried about a 20% tariff.
Right. Any of the panel members would like to comment?
I think any distortion in the marketplace represents opportunity, and I think there's always creative somewhere on the technical, the system, or the who are going to seize the opportunity to do something new when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, and
We'll just sell them projectors.
exactly. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. There are alternative, technologies in the medium term until they figure out the supply chain, and they'll be, I think.
No, the demand for digital canvas is going to be there. It's really about if you can be a little more creative than just saying here's an LED wall.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing going on now, which is that brands, facilities, localities want to create an experience. Selling advertising isn't really working in terms of touching certain markets like you and your millennial friends.
Yeah, you.
So they have to find alternate ways of doing that, and alternate ways of communicating their brand messages or their artistic message. And where I'm seeing this happen is in these created environments. And nothing creates an immersive environment better and cheaper than visual display. There's no sets to fabricate, there's nothing to design. So that has been helped by the advances in the projection technology, particularly laser phosphor. There's no lamps. So now we're seeing designs and we're seeing implementations, and I'm sure you've done plenty of that, Amal, where 10 projectors, 20 projectors, 50 projectors are being realized because A, you don't have to spend the money to replace the lamps, plus you don't have to realign the system when you replace the lamp and you move the projector out of alignment, and then you have to fix the whole system again. So laser and laser phosphor has been a disruptor there, and that has enabled designers to create these environments that are in demand now. Whether they continue to be or not, that to me is a question.
See, that's interesting. There was a Harvard Business Review article about the experience economy, talking how we move from the industrial economy to the service economy to now the experience economy, which is we're not so much selling services or products, now we're selling the staging of them. For example, to use this cake, right? Initially, you had to buy cake mix, then you bought an actual baked cake, and now you're buying like a Chuck E. Cheese that includes the cake and stages how you eat the cake and how you experience it. And I think that brands that are trying to remain premium and remain kind of differentiated have to move into that experience domain, and really like the millennial, the Generation Z audience is looking for, okay, I'm stepping into here, I kind of want to feel the brand, I want to experience something new and amazing, because if it's a product, I can get it on Amazon.
Right.
So really, I have a talk, or I have a session in an hour, where I'm talking specifically about retail and hospitality, and how the brands that are trying to really engage the changing audience that is so technological and born into the internet and born with a smartphone in their pocket and are used and are expecting digital content everywhere, how they really want that experience. And that's kind of the next generation of premium brands and premium venues is all about staging an experience. And to our benefit, like digital technology displays, audio visual is a huge enhancement to what they could have done before.
Which industry would you say is more advanced in terms of adopting new experience and providing more immersive kind of experience to end customers?
I think the industry that needs it the most, not that they're adapting it the most, is actually movie theaters, especially with Netflix.
Right.
I think they really need to change the whole movie theater experience. I think that's like a core issue to their industry, but they haven't realized it yet. But another one that's really interesting is like museums, right? Again, you're not going for the knowledge is on Google. You're going for the curation, the experience, and now there's amazing digital museums. There's one in Tokyo, one in Paris, that is a full, hundreds of projectors, everything is completely projection mapped, and you're experiencing the art and kind of soaking in the knowledge in a much more kind of experiential learning way, and something that is also very Instagram worthy. So you go there, you take videos of yourself, of your friends. That's becoming more and more of the culture. I don't know how much I personally like it or not, but it is a part of what has to be designed into the venue for it to really be effective. And after like an experiential marketing campaign, a person on average tells 17 other people. So that word of mouth, that reach is much more organic. And even if it's pictures versus videos, we're very much kind of movement oriented. Videos have 1,200% more shares on Facebook than pictures or on social media in large. So it's really about creating environments that people want to go to and want to take pictures of and want to share and want to take videos of and really kind of drive both that experience there and also the memory moving forward.
What is the retail industry asking in terms of interactivity, with the screen or with the environment, and how does that influence a design involving display?
I'm sure.
I think you probably have more to say to that than I do, but one thing I'm seeing is there's a real convergence, if not of technologies, of objectives among clients, retail, flagship retail stores, shopping centers. I don't know how many end users there are here in the audience of destinations or whatnot that are using these technologies, but Changi Airport came to us. They wanted to create Terminal 4, which opened last year. What was it called? The Theater of Experience. They wanted it to be a theater. Now we go to shopping center owners and they say, we just killed all our television ads. We killed our radio ads. We killed our print ads. We want the experience of our shopping center to be the advertisement that people are saying, I have to go there, that it's top of mind and a draw. Where did they go? Did they go to West Edmonton Mall or Mall of America or something like that to do their learning? They went to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They come back, the CEO, C-suite of one of the biggest shopping center companies in the world, and say, we want to be a venue. And the venues, the airports are actually shopping centers. If you know the economics of an airport, they make more than 50% of their money, the better run ones, off of the retail layer. Retail depends on drawing power and dwell time. You want footfall and you want more of it. You want them to stay longer. You want them to love it, share it. And ideally, if you can go from that spectator aspect to saying, hey, we had someone picnicking in front of us. They spent some money on pop, and so we don't have a clue who they are. They're gone. We'll never know if it was them that came back or somebody else. How can we somehow engage that they're signed up? We know who they are. We can profile them. We can offer them something. We can invite them to come back. And so that bidirectionality is not only experiential, it's also a relationship kind of vehicle. And everybody wants it. The stadiums want it, the musicians in the stadiums want it. And AV is the delivery vehicle in both directions, in and out. You mentioned projectors. We just did an arena with 60 projectors in it, in terms of projecting the curve. Like Pete's seen such a clear line through the past into the future. We can speculate. We're on projects 3-5 years out. We can say that we're going to have 3.5 millimeter LED pitch at a price that is 60%, whatever less than today. I'm just throwing numbers out. In 3 or 5 years, when we need to actually place an order and procure it, something at prices or at resolutions unheard of today, because that's the way the curve is going. And the friction that we're seeing in all of you being run off of your feet, the restriction to demand for AV solutions right now is in our ability to design and specify it in a really, really professional way that serves clients in a sustainable long-term way. Right now, that is the sticking point. There's a little blip in the price of some black plastic from China is not going to reduce this industry to ashes. It's really having, Moment Factory is 400 people. You add up all of the companies in our niche on the entire planet. Are we 2,000? 2,000 people. There's 7 billion people on this planet plus who are hungry for the kind of solutions that we can bring as an industry into it. And there was some of the stuff Pete was saying and you as well were about all of the different army of expertise. And the thing that made me think of, at first I was like, army, I'm not sure that's the right metaphor. It is a little bit of a war, but the thing about the army is this notion of collaboration. To what degree there's so many of us that need to collaborate together in this industry to make something exceptional happen, and then to sustain it long term, so that it's actually affordable and refreshable for clients, that it doesn't become a white elephant or a dead duck of some kind.
Mm-hmm. You actually touched on a really interesting point earlier too about the flagship stores. And just going back to retail a little bit, the internet and Amazon could be viewed as a threat, but also for the flagship stores, if you think Adidas in New York, they're putting that much more digital signage and making that much more of an experience, so that when you go online and you see so many shoes, you recognize the brand and build that brand association through the experiential, whatever it is you experience in your store. And it is very multidisciplinary, absolutely. I know we're working on actually tools for the AV to make it kind of simpler and more approachable. Like you can see our technology at NEC's booth. But for us, it's about just kind of lowering the barrier to entry, so you don't need so many programmers or designers, and actually any AV professional can download our software and start doing experiential, because more and more people are looking for it. It doesn't have to be like so extreme. It can even be like a simple LED wall with just an experiential element, but more and more retail locations are looking to get into that in some capacity.
Do you think the Pro AV industry is ready for, so let me back up a little bit, in order to bring all this experience, in order to implement, all this interactiveness, there's a lot of pieces that need to fit together, a lot of different technologies need to come together, right? Does the industry have necessary training and the manpower to support it at this point? What needs to be done?
When we look at sort of the incoming group of students, graduates, traditionally, they veer off into audio, they veer off into content creation or design, they veer off into lighting design, and they stay away from video. So it's a very big challenge. And I'm not even sure why that occurs to the degree that it is, but we have to drag people into video technology support, kicking and screaming. different on the programming side. If you're creating content, if you're creating pathways, if you're creating apps, that's different. But I'm talking about the young men and women that are going to come into the industry and set up these disruptive displays that are going to install the 50 projectors. It's been difficult. And I think that part of that is that there's kind of an inherent lack of sexiness about it. And I think that the manufacturers actually could be doing a better job on that end in terms of ensuring that they are speaking to younger people and people getting into the workforce. But it's particularly on the video side of AV, it's a challenge.
And I find it an astonishing observation. As much as if I think about it, it's true. But it's got to be one of the most fun industries in the world, in the audiovisual industry. I don't know of another one that offers so many different kinds of opportunity for people of all ages and all skill sets. And the opportunities were not at the end of an era by any means. I think we're just at the beginning of an era of a whole next generation of disruption. You talked about the separation of different layers of parts of the solution of a technology for sensing and the actual display delivery. But in the same breath, we're seeing the way screens evolved from being separate to embedded touchscreen technologies in them, and there's still a separate layer to a certain degree. But even with the laser phosphor projectors, one of the things that comes from innovating with those is going into the invisible spectrum. And I talked about sending stuff out that can be read back into the environment. And if we want to be able to calibrate with laser, we can go work with customizing parts of the spectrum that are going out that the human eye doesn't interfere with the content we're seeing, but we can use other cameras to sense where all those placeholders in the content are and use software to recalibrate it. In the case of those 55 video projectors, what we're really seeing is people want content in their environment when they want it. So where they want it, when they want it. And with the 60 projectors we put into that arena, we replaced a tremendous amount of LED with that, an acre of LED almost, by putting moving mirror systems on it. And in real time, between software and the moving mirror systems, we could calibrate that. I don't know, we didn't get any of the videos into the machine,
Yeah,
eh?
I can play.
Yeah, well, there was, no,
I think Tammuz had a video.
There was one just showing the way the content can go off of a 20,000 square foot screen, bleed in real time off of the wall of a stadium onto the floor and be reconfigured in a second as it reassembles with 40, 50 projectors. I'm not sure. Well, this particular video is more about the tracking layer of being able to adapt content in and around objects and people that are moving through that environment. It's a little bit of a overview of some of the stuff. Innovation again in terms of response rate in not only projection systems, but there's always a weak link somewhere in there about getting data out of an environment, generate the content at the right pixel depth, and get it back into an environment with the least lag time possible. And we're arriving there. That's one thing that we're going to see is is real-time generation in the same way we've gotten rid of a lot of the image processing, big bucks machines from the past. Generating that content in real time now is a real possibility. And a lot of companies are building up empires around media servers and whatnot that can actually generate that amount of those number of pixels for these 16K, 20K, 30K environments that we're looking at. So tracking, real-time tracking, low latency, really important to what we're seeing with the environment.
And high frame rate.
High frame rate.
Which is an attribute that we haven't really focused on in the past, but for this kind of stuff is going to be critical.
Yeah.
So projectors and systems that can handle 240 frames and so on, that's when you can really get that tracking to work.
Exactly.
Almost naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
There's some great stuff, and I think there's a lot of great companies doing, working in this space, a lot of great creatives, and the main takeaway from a reel like this is I hear a lot from the AV industry that the demand isn't just necessarily there yet. And we see clients who are not afraid of the big ticket spends, leaving tens of millions of dollars of spending on the table every year for integrated AV solutions. Because, and I've heard CEOs say this, we're scared shitless of failing. We do not feel like we can build up the team behind us in our company to be able to manage this Lamborghini if we buy it. But we would buy the Lamborghini tomorrow morning if we were sure we could drive it. And that's extremely important. We need to support the end user groups. And I think that's a big change I've seen with the VIXA. Props to Infocom for taking this whole shift of focus and expansion of focus to include the end user groups, to say we're not just about manufacturers and integrators and getting to know each other better and supporting each other, but we're enablers, educators of the end users. And the more safe they feel, the more educated in making a decision and taking that leap of faith into an audiovisual solution, we're seeing it. Where the audiovisual going into every single environment you can imagine. You're seeing their nature parks, the destinations work that we do had parks and recreation previously. It had resorts and casinos, retail, both individual stores and shopping centers, and public spaces, airports, bridges, $40 million AV installation on the bridge in Montreal. Is it an important installation? I think a lot of AV integrators would like to have had that project. Very, very important spends, completely outside of the digital signage DOOH out-of-home market. It's massive spends happening in those environments to gain reputation, to do something special, to do some storytelling, attract and retain visitorship. It's the sky's the limit.
Yeah. Okay. And because you touched on like a very important point, which is just how complicated it has been and how simple it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And especially your work in projection mapping cathedrals, they do beautiful work. But in terms of getting it to a place where end users can really do it and manage it and feel comfortable, I think the burden there is, or the responsibility falls on like software technology companies like mine. Like what we're thinking about is more and more, how can we make it simpler? How can you customize the content faster and easier and really lower the expertise needed? So ideally, in our ideal world, any AV person, even a graphic designer, can go online and customize an experience in 2 minutes. But really get it to a point where an end user can feel comfortable buying a Lamborghini and then also seeing, okay, well, I can drive it too. The software, it's not that complicated. And then the solution to it not being that complicated is to make it more complicated. So for example, with us, there's like a learning feature. You put a depth camera, and you don't need to teach the end user, okay, this is how you calibrate, set the depth, do this and that. You just click learn, and then the AI algorithm like actually learns the space and is able to do it for them.
Right.
So that's really where I think it needs to go.
Okay. All right. With that, I would really like to thank the panel members for this discussion, and we've concluded that there are plenty of disruption in display, new display technologies coming, but at the end, what really matters is what the end users want, which is an immersive and engaging environment.